Hi there. Welcome to Flaming Star Podfics. Today we are continuing our reading of Second Chance Ranch by Thief of Light 68 on AO3. This is Chapter 14, Blackout. Please note that this chapter has trigger warnings for violence, arson, guns, murder, and family death. So if any of these topics are difficult for you, please reconsider listening to this particular chapter. Dumping the clothes on the bed, Izuku went to check on him. Kachan? He didn't see him at first through the bubbles. He sounded half asleep. It looked like the jacuzzi had done its job. One arm hung limply over the side of the tub, and his eyes were closed. The water swirled steadily, keeping the bubbles afloat. Sitting on the edge of the tub, Izuku touched his forehead, which was flushed from the heat. "Don't drown," he chuckled, running his hands into his spikes. He could feel the crustiness of his hair product. "I should just wash my hair," he sighed, but didn't move. "Do you like this?" Izuku massaged his head while trying to untangle his hair. I do. That night at the hotel, you surprised me." A smile pulled at the corner of his mouth. "I surprised myself, but I wanted to feel what your hair was like without all the stuff in it." "That stuff makes it look cool." Izuku tugged through a particularly bad clump. "I guess. But I like your hair when it hangs down. Makes you look, almost old." "Not old, Kachan." "Okay, like someone's dad." Maybe. It does make you look softer." "Yeah, like a dad." "Do you have hair like your dad?" "Nope, from my mom." "But you said soft like a dad. Was your dad like that?" He opened his eyes for a moment, and his brows knitted in thought. "Yeah, funny. Never thought about that. He was patient and quiet. My mom and I were always carrying on, loud as shit." "Interesting. So you have your mom's personality, but you look like your dad then?" "A mix of both. When I was in high school, I looked like my mom, but I'm seeing my dad's face as I get older." A smile ghosted his lips. "You're smiling. What are you thinking about?" Red eyes opened again. He shrugged and closed them. Not sure." He moved his body around in the water. "It's getting cold." Sliding his hand into the water, Izuku could feel that it had cooled. Plunging his hand down further, his fingers grazed his butt as he reached for the drain. "Sorry." He laughed nervously, finding the plug. "That's okay," he teased. "You can play with my butt and my hair at the same time." He smiled cockily and wiggled his hips. "How about you move your hand around to the front next?" Izuku wasn't going to let him change the subject. "How about your body shape? Do you take after your mom or dad?" "Meaning?" "Like your butt. Does your mom or dad have a big butt?" His eyes popped open. This time he looked disturbed. "You have a fascination with my parents that's bordering on unhealthy at the moment." "Kachan, I'm just curious. You met my mom." "Well, unless you have some kind of time machine, you'll never meet mine." "I know, and I'm sorry." He grunted softly and pointed to his head. "You stopped massaging. Would you like me to wash your hair?" He popped up and pulled himself into a sitting position. Bubbles slid from his shoulders and chest, revealing his muscles 1 tiny inch at a time. Izuku tried not to stare, but from Kachan's widening grin, he knew exactly where he was looking. "I would love for you to wash my hair." He bent over, waiting patiently. Using the sprayer, Izuku began washing his spikes. Continuing the massage, he scrubbed his scalp until his hair felt clean under his fingers. Then he rinsed everything out. Picking up the conditioner, he shook the bottle, but Kachan spun around quickly. "What's that?" He squinted, trying to read the bottle. "Just conditioner. Makes my hair really sag. Remember, I hate that dad look." "But look at your hair, Kachan," he protested. "I know we just got it cut, but it's so dry." Izuku rubbed the ends between his fingers. "Dry is okay." "No," he scoffed and squirted some conditioner into his hand. "Dry is for wood, but not for hair." "Wood? What the hell kind of analogy is that?" "Come here, Kachan." Huffing, he peered at the glob in his hand. No, they won't spike right. How about no spikes tomorrow? Just for me? How about, his eyes gleamed playfully, another reward? Chuckling, Izuku tipped his head. Are you going to do this to me every time? Yup. You said I was lower than a dog earlier. I deserve something. All right, let me put conditioner in your hair and I'll give you a reward. More like it. Kachan turned and leaned his head back. Izuku chuckled to himself and spread the conditioner into his hair. A strong smell of coconuts filled the steamy air. Peering over his shoulder, Kachan frowned at him. I'm going to smell like some stupid Hawaiian cocktail. The smell will go away. Izuku carefully rubbed the conditioner into every inch of his hair. Once satisfied, he slid his hands down to his shoulders and began to massage. Kachan grunted, a deep guttural sound, and his head fell forward. Izuku smiled at his reaction. This is the kind of conditioner you have to leave on for a while, so your reward is a shoulder massage. Nice, he breathed in contentment. Pausing, Izuku took advantage of the moment. That is, as long as you answer my questions. He let out a long sigh. Fine. Izuku continued his massage. So you never answered. Whose butt do you have? Kachan burst out laughing. You're good at that. At what? Always surprising me. He played with the slowly popping bubbles. I think my dad. You said you worked with him? Yeah, in his shop. My mom did the books, so the three of us would be there together a lot. Did your mom do other work? Izuku could feel a bad knot in his neck. Using his thumb, he ground into the tense muscle. Kachan almost pitched forward into the tub, moaning. Ah, Freckles, you know how to take care of me. He twisted his shoulder, helping him get the right spot. Kachan? I asked if your mom did other stuff. Yeah, she was a bookkeeper for a few other places around my dad's shop. Didn't make much, but we were never hurting for money. No fancy vacations or anything, and our neighborhood wasn't the best for the most part. The most part? Freckles. He let out another long sigh and straightened, pointing to his head. The conditioner has been in long enough. My hair is going to have a coat of wax on it at this rate. Oh, sorry. Izuku grabbed the sprayer and rinsed his hair, watching a few foamy bubbles flow down his back. He decided that Kachan had one of the most amazing backs he'd ever seen. His muscles were perfectly proportioned, large but not bulky. Running his hand through his hair, Kachan hissed, Fuck, they'll never spike again with this shit. Then he sniffed his hand. And I fucking smell like a pina colada. You do smell like one of those umbrella drinks. Laughing, he wiped his hands on a towel. The water's cold, Kachan mumbled, turning to lay back down. Do you want to stay in the bath? Izuku let him detour the conversation for the moment. Lifting his hands, he grimaced and wiggled his fingers. They'd begun to pucker. 5 minutes? His ears turned a bright red. This is the first bath I've had in almost 4 years. Are you kidding? Izuku choked out and turned on the hot water. Wow, stay in for as long as you want. He let some of the cooler water out of the tub, this time avoiding grabbing his butt. You missed me, he murmured softly. I did. Izuku winked. I thought you wanted to stay in the bath. Yeah, he agreed and settled back. I'm too comfortable right now for anything else. That's a new one. Izuku smiled and adjusted the water temperature. Kachan really did look relaxed, but he needed to keep prodding. So, was Shigaraki part of the fray? He jerked up. His soft eyes suddenly sparked fire. How the fuck do you know his name? My file is confidential. Aizawa. Shit. Family friend. Should have known. He rubbed his face. I'm sorry. I wasn't going to say anything, but after what happened... Well, now this makes fucking sense. I wondered why you were so desperate to get me out of jail. He sat back and crossed his arms defiantly. How much more do you know? Not much. Mr. Aizawa called me when the warden shared your file with him. Why the fuck would he do that? His brow furrowed so hard his forehead wrinkled in on itself. He's retiring and wanted to make sure Aizawa had your information. I don't think he was expecting him to share it with me. Why did he? Because Izuku pulled a towel off the stack and laid it on his lap, playing with the fabric. Oi, spit it out already. You remember the man that took your construction job? The reason you came here? Yeah, what about him? Izuku sucked in a quick breath. They found him dead. He was murdered. Shit, someone knew? He breathed out slowly, even though it was confidential? Yeah, that's why the warden contacted Aizawa. I guess the paperwork for this job was never filed, thankfully. He warned him to be careful. Fuck, Katsuki whispered hoarsely. There was something else. The reason the investigators found out about the man killed at the construction job, Izuku hesitated. They recovered Shigaraki's body. There was the briefest pause before Katsuki stood, water surging off his body. I need to get out. Tomura was dead. Not that he was completely surprised, but that small bit of hope was finally crushed. Okay, we can go back to the living room where it's warm. Freckles grabbed his robe and held it up. You can wear this until you're dry. No. Katsuki clenched his jaw. I'm leaving the ranch. He couldn't risk anyone else getting hurt. We all are, Kachan. He shook the robe. Together, remember? Now put this on. His green eyes glinted challengingly. I'm done with this game. Go boss someone else around. Moving towards the edge of the tub, he started to get out. No! Freckles grabbed his arms and held him in place. Damn it, don't you understand? I gave up everything because I want to be with you. I never asked you to do that. Katsuki wrenched himself free. If you give this ranch up for me, you're a fucking idiot. Kachan! Freckles yelled. Then, obviously startled by his own vehemence, he lowered his voice. You don't understand. For the first time in my entire life, I'm choosing what I want for myself. He laid his hand on his cheek and held his gaze. You're an amazing person, and the more I get to know you, the more special you become to me. You're a fool. Slapping his hand away, he climbed out of the tub and grabbed a towel. 3 people. He shuddered violently as tears burned. 3 people I loved are dead because of me. I won't be responsible for killing another. So you admit you love me? Drying his body, he grew quiet. I didn't say that. Yes, you did. Freckles tugged on his towel. You said you wouldn't be responsible for killing another person you love. I'll take responsibility for myself. All I ask is that you give me a second chance at love, the same way I gave you another chance in your life. That's not fair. He snarled at him, not turning around. I know, but I didn't leave you that day in the parole office because I thought you deserved to be here. The onslaught of pain was crushing him. Katsuki tried to block out what he was saying, but it was exactly what he wanted to hear. Fuck, his voice cracked. Do you understand? If they come here, that's a chance I'm willing to take. Not me. Freckles pressed a hand on his back. His palm was warm against his skin. I'll let you leave the ranch if you can tell me you don't care about me. That... Katsuki cleared his throat, trying to get past the lump. That's why I have to go, because I do feel that way about you. I haven't been able to get you out of my head since the day we met. Freckles hugged him from behind, his arms crisscrossing his chest. Then stay here. We're stronger together, Kachan. You know that. Please? He kissed his back, leaning his forehead into him. Fuck. Katsuki knew the answer should be no. He needed to get out before anyone got hurt, but even worse was the thought of never seeing him again. I shouldn't. Yes, you should. What safer place in the whole world than a ranch with 4 cowboys and a vicious ranch dog? Vicious? Katsuki snorted and then hung his head. He stopped. I'm getting cold. You are? He could hear the relief in his voice. Your clothes are in my room. Running his hands down his back, Freckles pushed him gently into the bedroom. Walking blindly, Katsuki let him take the lead. Somehow, before he knew it, he was dressed and sitting on the bed. Tomura's dead. It kept swirling in his numbed brain, dredging up the sorrow that he'd buried long ago. Do you want to stay here or go into the living room? Freckles knelt in front of him and looked up worriedly at him. Katsuki put his head in his hands and tried to calm down, but he had nothing left. He was running on raw emotions, and the damn tears were building. Pressing the heels of his hands into his eyes, he forced them back. Stay here, he croaked out. Okay, hang on for a second. He patted his leg lightly as he stood. Katsuki laughed at that thought. Hang on. To fucking what? He felt so close to breaking down that every thought, every breath was forced. He managed to hang on while Freckles changed his clothes and folded down the covers. He even held it together when he pulled him into his mountain of pillows and hugged him. When his fingers slid through his hair with soft, reassuring strokes, Katsuki was sure he'd lose it, but somehow he stayed in control. Are you cold? Freckles pulled a blanket over them both. Tell me. Katsuki tangled his legs into his and leaned back to see his face. Where did they find him? Frowning, he hesitated. It couldn't have been good, considering the last place I saw him. Oh, Freckles bit his lip. His body was pulled from the river by your house after a big storm. He washed up on the shore. Damn idiot, I told him to run. You warned him? His tone was quiet, not demanding. He was your boyfriend, right? The few times Katsuki had told the police the story, it had been irritatingly painful. Endless questions and demands for answers. But he knew with Freckles, if he didn't want to tell him, he wouldn't press. Closing his eyes, he prepared himself. Not in the beginning, and Tenko Shimura was his real name. He was adopted as a kid, so he went by the name his new father gave him, Tomura Shigaraki. The image of Tomura's face popped in his mind, and Katsuki curled into a ball. Tears floated along his lashes, slipping down his skin. When did you meet him? Freckles continued stroking his head, his fingers like blissful waves of comfort. High school. He sighed heavily. At first he was just a terrified kid standing next to me in line, but too cool to show it. Sounds like you, Kachan, he continued, smoothing his drying hair. Did he have spiky hair like you? No, his hair was straight, kind of long, but he liked to color it all the time. He was always getting into trouble at school, and it made him popular. What color? Whatever color they'd put up on the bulletin board as banned, that was the color I was putting on his hair that night. He laughed wistfully. He was the school hero. Did you go to a private school? Yeah, it was run by the church. They used to give out scholarships every year to the local neighborhood kids. Tomer and I were the two poor kids in our grade. How did you become friends? Alphabet. We stood next to each other. Kachan, I know my letters. Freckles teased gently. Bakugo and Shigaraki? The school lined us up in 2 rows by class, and it just happened that the way the names fell, he stood by me in the second row. Oh. We got paired up a lot because of that, and over time we became friends. When did it, change? If that's okay for me to ask. Katsuki snorted. The man who basically forced me to talk, and now you're asking permission? Well, I'm curious about your life, but I understand that not everything has to be shared. He cupped his chin and kissed his forehead. But I do want to know about you. Summer of 10th grade. Katsuki wiped his wet cheeks as tears stopped for the moment. Talking with Freckles was making him feel a little bit better, not that he'd ever admit that. We went camping with a group of guys. Nothing crazy. We borrowed a tent from a friend and went to some campground that was more asphalt than dirt. There was a huge pool, and we roasted marshmallows. Typical stuff. Freckles didn't respond, but propped his head in his hand and listened. We shared a 2-man tent and were wrestling over the blanket. 'Cause stupid Tomura forgot his, and I landed on top of him. He laughed at the memory. Then I kissed him. Scared the shit out of both of us. I can imagine. Did you know you liked guys, or that he did? Didn't think about it either way. Our school frowned on same-sex shit, but it happened anyway. They pretty much turned a blind eye if it wasn't too obvious. He couldn't have been more popular, but he preferred hanging out with me. Somewhere along the line, I started thinking how much I liked him, and I wanted more. Yeah, I remember that with Shouto. It's like a light just flipped on inside me, and these weird feelings always made me feel uncomfortable when he was around. Katsuki held back his biting retort about Shouto and being uncomfortable, grumbling instead that he'd stopped rubbing his head. Freckles chuckled and dragged his fingers through his hair. Grunting in satisfaction, Katsuki continued. By the time we went camping, I'd been wondering, but hadn't done anything because I was terrified he'd dump me as a friend. He obviously didn't. At first he did, avoided me for about a month. Then he came over one day, right before school started. He said he missed me, and if going out would get me back, then he was okay with everything. We were never apart after that, until graduation. Graduation? Did you break up? Katsuki sucked in a sharp breath and shifted on the bed. Well, you ought to know nothing is that easy. I went to work with my dad full time, and Tomura, well, he'd hang around the garage. Was he a mechanic like you? No, he tried out a bunch of different jobs, but he'd always quit and complain that he couldn't have me to himself all day. Oh. Yeah, at first it was cute, but I could tell my dad wasn't happy. Plus, he'd get bored super fast if I wasn't paying attention to him. Katsuki frowned, thinking back to his time in the garage with him. I think it was about a year after graduation that he started disappearing. Where was he going? I didn't really think about it at first. He told me he got a night shift job and was sleeping days. I was just relieved he wasn't irritating my parents anymore. But then he stopped contacting me, just a few days here and there. Then one time it stretched out over 2 weeks, which was strange. I stopped by his house and his dad said he'd moved out. Just like that? And he didn't tell you? Nope. It was the next day that a man came into our garage driving a gorgeous Camaro. Your favorite, Freckles remarked absent-mindedly. Yeah, Katsuki smiled, happy that he'd remembered. Except he asked my dad for the Shigaraki discount. What was that? Well, my dad said he had no clue what he was talking about, and the man lost his shit, started screaming at him. Thankfully, I was there and I was able to calm the guy down. I explained that Shigaraki was a friend of mine and asked what he'd promised him. That's when he dropped the 50% off bomb. My dad blew a gasket. That's a big discount. Auto shops make money on labor, but not a lot on parts, so 50 off would essentially eat into my dad's wallet. What happened? He pulled a gun on us and threatened that if we didn't give him what he'd been promised, he'd kill us and then go kill Shigaraki. Katsuki stared at the ceiling, trying not to remember the look of stark fear on his dad's face. That was the beginning of the end. Scooting closer, Freckles slung his arm across his chest and kissed his shoulder. We only use guns occasionally to scare coyotes off the ranch. I've never had one pointed at me. That must have been terrible. Katsuki's heart was beating painfully now, as the memories started bubbling to the surface. My mom wanted to call the cops. His voice broke slightly. They did talk to a few people, and it turned out everyone was being squeezed. The Shigaraki discount was being spread across the whole neighborhood. Crap. Turns out he'd joined a gang, and he'd gone up against a leader. When I asked around, I was told he'd taken over. Did he kill the other guy? No. Katsuki felt the tightness in his chest as his eyes welled with tears. He should have, though. Freckles popped up on his elbow and touched his cheek lightly. We can stop if you don't want to finish. Can't now. Katsuki waited for the inevitable, the torrent of memories that were going to tear through him. At least having Freckles holding him felt like some kind of security blanket. But, he let out a long sigh. Yeah? This part of the story I've never told anyone, not even the cops. You haven't? His green eyes widened, and he squeezed him tighter. No, I guess, well, I didn't know if Tomura had escaped, and I knew if the cops found him, he'd be killed. What happened? When I finally tracked him down, I begged him to stop with the crazy discount shit. He sort of agreed, but only if we got back together. Of course, I hadn't realized we'd broken up. I did, since it was killing business, and I loved him. But Freckles was holding his breath, and Katsuki didn't blame him. Well, it ticked off some of the older members, and the prior leader that Tomura should have killed found out. He got everyone in the gang riled up, and they went after Tomura, telling him we couldn't date unless I joined the gang. Oh shit. Oh shit is right. Katsuki licked his lips. Of course I refused. I told Tomura that he could do what he wanted. I loved him, but joining some gang wasn't going to prove anything. He disappeared for a while, and I thought it was over, but he came back. He told me he'd worked it out and everything would go back to normal. Did it? No, I found out the hard way that he'd fucking lied to me. That other person, Chizome, called himself Stain. Man, he's dangerous. I mean, insane kind of dangerous. Not that I knew that back then. When he figured out we were still dating, he vandalized my dad's garage and threatened me. I didn't take him seriously, though, like a dumbass. I still believed Tomura when he said he had things handled. Katsuki breathed in deep, letting the air expand in his chest, and then let it out slowly. Do they know when Tomura was killed? I'm not sure. Freckles had plastered himself against his side. The body was found about a month ago. He'd been, well, tied up and weighed down. They thought he'd been in the river for at least a few years. That makes sense. It'll be 4 years now, almost to the date. Really? It was right after Thanksgiving dinner. I remember because we were eating leftovers. My mom would stretch that shit out for as long as possible. I heard my phone ringing, and it was him. We'd had a few fights, so I ignored it. Decided to call him later. Closing his eyes, he could practically hear his phone buzzing. Peering at his screen, Katsuki frowned. Tomura had called him 4 times. What the hell was going on? Everything okay? His mom eyed his phone with disdain. Sorry, Mom. He put his phone away. It was her only rule at the dinner table. Is it Tomura? She spooned some more mashed potatoes onto her plate. Katsuki grunted. He knew what his mom thought of him. Yeah. Sighing, he forked a piece of turkey and stared at the reheated meat. Is he coming by? His dad glanced at him sympathetically. Not sure. We had a fight, and now he's been texting and calling every few minutes. He wiped his mouth. Suddenly there was a loud knock on the front door, and the doorbell started chiming incessantly. Who the hell is that? His mom jumped up and stormed towards the door. Katsuki was already up and running. Passing her by, he held up his hand. It's probably Tomura. I'll deal with him. Tell him to stop bugging us at dinner time. She humped at him, but went back to the table and sat down, only to lean sideways in her chair, trying to see out to the entryway. As he opened the door, Tomura burst through, slamming it closed behind him. Where are your parents? His eyes were round as saucers as he looked around the house. Get out. Katsuki shoved him, but he twisted away and darted down the hall towards the dining room. Everyone out of the house, he yelled as he pulled on his dad. You have to get out now. Tomura Shigaraki. His mom slammed down her napkin and stood pointing at him. Get out of our house. Katsuki had already caught up with him and hooked him by the neck, dragging him back to the front door. Damn you, he growled low as he reached for the knob. You heard my mom. Get out. I'll fucking call you later. Stop. He struggled to get free. You have to get out. From the dining room, Katsuki heard smashing glass, and then his mom started screaming as flames burst from the dining room into the hall. The entire house trembled as an explosion rattled the whole structure. Flames rolled across the hall and scorched the walls. To his right, another window shattered. Turning, Katsuki watched as a bottle with a flaming rag stuffed in the top spun through the air, crashing to the ground in front of their couch. The new explosion engulfed the entire room, and he barely had time to cover his head before burning heat singed his skin. He could hear more screaming. Get out now! Tomura was yelling over the sounds of the explosions. Pain seared down Katsuki's body as fire seemed to converge on every part of his home at once. He tried to breathe out, but there was only thick smoke which burned his lungs. He felt a hand land on his arm. It was Tomura. He was pulling him back to the front door. The screaming stopped. Looking back into his burning home, he could see that the dining room was engulfed in flames. Mom! Dad! He screamed hoarsely. Ripping his arm free, he started to run into the intense heat. Tomura grabbed the collar of his shirt and yanked so hard Katsuki flew backwards and landed flat on his back. Smoke and fire curled above him. Tomura was in his face, yelling at him, "No, you'll be dead. We gotta get out of here." Dragging him by the shirt to the front door, he opened it, but as the new flow of air came into the home, it fed the flames. Like an inferno, they leapt hungrily, eating at the furniture and carpet. "Let go!" Katsuki hollered, scrambling to his knees. But as he looked back into his house, he watched as flames licked at the walls, right where he'd been standing. "Shut up!" Tomura snapped. "Get up! We have to—" He stopped. Straightening, the blood drained from his face. "Get up!" He jerked his shirt, his gaze not wavering from the side yard. Jumping to his feet, Katsuki could see several dark figures sitting on their fence. Standing on the sidewalk, just outside the gate, was a single person. He recognized the mask on his face immediately. It was Chizome. Cat. Tomura held him. "They're here to kill you too," he whispered hoarsely. "They've called a blackout on you. We've got to go." Pushing him off the porch, she began to run, pulling him along behind him. Stumbling around the side of the house, Katsuki tripped over his feet to see into the windows, but there were only flames roaring from the broken glass. Mom. Dad. It still wasn't making sense. Everything seemed surreal. "Keep going." Tomura raced to the broken part of the fence, jamming his hand in between the boards where he opened a large gap. Pushing Katsuki through, he slid in just as the dark figures emerged from the side of the house, following them. "Shortcut!" Tomura shouted and hauled him into the next yard. Once clear of the house, they began running. Katsuki couldn't catch his breath. His lung burned from inhaling smoke, and tears streamed from his eyes. He wanted to stop. Looking over his shoulder, he slowed. He needed to go back. Were his parents really dead? Stopping, Tomura swung around and slapped his face. "Get it together, or you're dead next. Hear me?" Katsuki blinked. He barely felt his hand connect with his cheek. Crap. Tomura frowned and grabbed his hand again. "Just stay with me, okay?" They zigzagged through more yards and alleyways, cutting back around to the commercial section. "We'll hole up in the old warehouse." Tomura looked back at him. Katsuki could see he was hoping for him to respond, to do anything, but he couldn't. Looking down at the hand holding his as they ran, he wondered if this was a dream. "This way!" Tomura squeezed his fingers in a crushing grip and cut left. He darted down a dark street before slipping in between two buildings and finally stopped, slumping against the brick wall. Katsuki fell into him. Tomura. His parents. They were dead. Cat. He wrapped him up in a tight hug as they tried to catch their breath. "It was Stain, that fucker. He called a blackout on you when he found out we were still together." Pulling out of his arms, Katsuki could see him in the soft twilight. His pale skin seemed to glow, and his hair, now dyed an eerie blue, hung limply around his face. For a moment, he almost looked undead. "Did you hear me?" Tomura was studying him closely, worry etched on his face. What's a blackout?" "It's a wipeout. They kill you and destroy everything in your life. Any memory of you is wiped from the face of the earth." Hearing footsteps, he pulled a gun from his jacket and shoved it into his pants. "I don't want that." "Then don't use it. We have to go." He edged to the street. "If we get separated, meet at our old hideout." Not waiting, he sprinted across the street and ran into the old churchyard. Pausing for a split second, Katsuki finally darted after him. Cutting through the graveyard, they popped out along the river. There, the stench of fetid water hung heavy in the air. Trotting down the abandoned street, they stopped at one of the larger warehouses with high fencing and barbed wire fortifying it from trespassers. "It's still there." Katsuki pointed to the gap in the razor-sharp wire. The same one they'd crawl through all during high school. They knew the drill, having done it so many times before. Katsuki gave Tomura a leg up so he could climb to the top and balance on his stomach. Then he leaned down to grab his hand. Katsuki was climbing up the fence when a car squealed around the corner. "Fuck!" Tomura yanked him to the top and jumped off the high fence. He stumbled and fell, landing next to him. Katsuki pulled him up. "Did you hurt yourself?" "No." He shook his arm free and started running towards the large warehouse, but from the hitch in his stride, Katsuki could tell he'd twisted his ankle. "Let me carry you." He pulled on his shoulder. "No." Then Tomura's face softened as he hobbled. "Just help me inside." They stopped at the dumpster that was parked underneath the window. "It better still be unlocked." "It will," he nodded. "Give me a leg up on the dumpster." Cupping his hands, Katsuki threw him upwards, and hauling himself up, he waited as Tomura slid his hands along the pane. The window jiggled in the frame and began to slide upwards. Relief swept through him as Tomura crawled into the window. Going in behind him, Katsuki turned and closed the window. Through the glass, he saw several figures race past the dumpster towards the back. Tomura was already walking along the planks that someone had set out years ago. Staying by the window, Katsuki watched them circle back. Slinking away from the glass, he leaned against the wall and waited. It looked like there were 4 of them. They were talking and pointing up at the windows. Finally, 2 ran towards the front, and the other 2 started climbing up the dumpster. "Fuck, they're coming!" He traversed the boards quickly and scrambled down the broken ladder. "This way," Tomura's voice echoed from somewhere in the darkness below. A gunshot rang out, sounding like a roar of thunder in the huge space. Katsuki jumped the rest of the way off the ladder and hunched over to race for cover. Another shot rang out behind him. This time his leg collapsed as hot drilling pain dug into his thigh. Sprawling face first onto the ground, Katsuki rolled over and held his leg, biting his lip to keep from screaming. He could feel blood seep from the wound and drench his hands. Trying to think past the pain, he flipped back on his stomach and worked his way slowly across the floor, trying to find a hiding spot. "Katsuki!" Tomura's voice whispered hoarsely, causing more gunfire to follow. The sound of heavy boots on the concrete floor reverberated in the cavernous space. Come out, wherever you are," a deep voice resonated with each step. It was Stain. "I heard there's a mouse problem here." A slow chuckle sounded as he began to sing, his rough, off-key voice filling the empty space. Two stupid mice, see how they run." There was a pause in the singing. "Do you like my song?" There was a silence except for the sound of the other men scrambling over the boards. Katsuki had managed to crawl behind some rusty barrels. Sitting up, he took off his shirt to tie it around his leg. Biting his lip, he grimaced as he knotted it as tightly as possible. Laying back down on his stomach, he shimmied to the side to see in the dim light of the warehouse. Stain struck a match, the sharp yellow light illuminating his masked face as he lit a cigarette. Inhaling deep, he blew the smoke into the air and watched it curl to the ceiling. "See how they run, see how they run," he continued to sing. "The little one tried to take over my gang." "Fuck you, Stain!" Tomura's voice sounded from the opposite side. Peeking out from his spot, Katsuki could see him behind an old forklift. "I told you to lay off. He's mine. The whole gang is mine. I make the fucking decisions. I'm recalling the damn Blackout." Pulling a knife from his belt, Stain continued his song with his cigarette clenched in his teeth. Two dead mice, pointing to his men on the boards. He motioned for them to come down. "I'm the leader, you stupid fucking idiot," he called out. "Now, time to clean house." Katsuki knew it wouldn't take long. It was 5 against 2, and his leg was completely useless with the blood trail that led straight to him. Pulling the gun from his waistband, his heart thundered so hard he was sure he was going to bleed to death. Suddenly, 2 shots sounded in succession, and the men that were climbing down the ladder both fell to the floor, landing with a sickening thud. The place went silent. "Down 2 men, Stain," Tomura yelled, and then dropping to his knees, he crawled towards Katsuki. "Get them!" Stain roared. "Back there!" Tomura was moving fast. "Get up!" He grabbed his hand, trying to get him to stand. "We have to go." Pain was all Katsuki could feel. But he knew they were fucked unless they could escape. Using every bit of strength, he managed to stand, holding tightly to Tomura. Another gunshot sounded, and a searing flood of pain and heat buried into his side. Looking down, Katsuki saw a perfect round bullet hole gushing blood. Cat! He could see him. His mouth was moving, but Katsuki couldn't hear him. Gripping his shirt, he pushed him away. Tomura, you need to run. Then the world went dark. Turning into Freckles, he wept. Wrenching sobs tore through him. Years of pent-up feelings for everything he'd lost. His parents, his freedom, and now Tomura. His mind buzzed from the agony that crippled him. Freckles held him quietly, waiting for him to let it out, which took time. Longer than he'd ever cried in his life. Breathing was impossible, and his eyes were swollen with tears. Tissues appeared as he wiped his face. Thanks. Katsuki sounded like he had a cold. Are you okay? Freckles snuggled closer and kissed his cheek. Yes. No. I can't even imagine. Katsuki grunted softly. When were you arrested? I woke up in the hospital, handcuffed to the bed. He frowned. Police were all over me about Tomura and Shizome. I kept the details vague. It was slim, but there was a chance that he'd made it out alive. I guess that's why they thought it was a gang shootout. Yeah. I'm so sorry, Kachan, for everything. Well, it's my own fault. I should have walked away sooner. Figured out he was lying. Katsuki had beat himself up mercilessly about everything that he could have done differently. Would that really have changed anything? Freckles voiced quietly. For all you know, every possible decision might have led to the same conclusion. That's impossible. Katsuki sniffled and wiped his nose. Eventually, one would be different. Why? People make bad decisions all the time. No matter what you did, Tomura may have still died, and that gang probably would have come after you and your family for something. Maybe. His head was pounding. Rubbing his temples, he groaned. Want something for that? Yeah, do you mind? He was wrung out. He'd experienced every damn emotion that was possible in the last 24 hours. Freckles handed him some pills and water. Gulping them down, he sighed. Thanks. Laying back down, he contemplated his choices now. What are you thinking? Freckles tapped his head. Nothing, just what stupid decisions am I making this time? Sliding down onto the pillow so that they faced each other, Freckles slipped his hand under his chin. Probably more than a few. Snorting, Katsuki huffed. That fills me with a lot of confidence. Do you love me? Well, shit. He stumbled over his surprise. He was too beaten down to lie. I do. More tears slipped from his eyes at the intensity of his confession. Then that's all that matters. Freckles kissed him. My love did shit for Tomura. Freckles snapped his brows together and gave him a stern look. But you did love him, and he knew it. Think about it, Kachan. You can't change anything about the past, but you loved each other. All the way to the end. Getting ready to pop off again, Freckles put his hand over his mouth to silence him. I love you, Kachan, and I promise that no matter what happens, I love you. If I die, I'll be happy knowing you love me too. He waited with his hand pressed against his mouth. Clicking his tongue, Katsuki let it go. It wasn't worth the argument, and in some way, he knew in his heart that Freckles was right. Kissing the palm of his hand, Katsuki hugged him. Letting out a heavy sigh, he smiled tiredly. Let's try to get a few hours of sleep. Hopefully Kiri will be home tomorrow. Good night, Kachan. Good night. Closing his eyes, the old familiar scenes slipped out of his mind, and the soft breath of the man next to him filled his senses. Kachan? Izuku nudged him gently. You need to wake up. He grumbled and rolled over, flopping onto his stomach. Chuckling, Izuku put on his flannel shirt and headed into the cold kitchen to light the stove and put on the kettle. Pulling on his thick coat and gloves, he ran out into the dark, frigid morning and opened up the barn door. The horses whinnied to him, calling out for food. Grabbing several flakes of hay, he decided to feed the whole barn. Sarah would have his hands full, being alone, until Shin came back with Kiri. He'd seen the text when he woke up this morning from Ciro that he'd done another round of cold therapy on Riot's legs after getting back from the hospital. Float seemed to be fine, happily munching on her hay. Riot, however, was rocking in his stall, chewing on nothing. "You must be in pain, boy." Izuku frowned. Getting out the bottles and syringes, he injected him with his medicine. He saw the new wraps Ciro had put on during the night, and kneeling, he pulled them off and inspected his legs. His knees were still swollen and missing large chunks of hair, but they weren't as bad as he'd expected. They'd do his cold wraps after breakfast while they tacked up their horses. Starting back up to the house, he smiled as he planned the day in his head. He was going to take Kachan on dawn patrol. Once in the kitchen, he pulled off the hot water and made a quick breakfast. Going back into his bedroom, he was still face down, sprawled across the bed, half covered by the blanket. "Kachan?" He shook him. It's time to get up." "Is it?" Katsuki opened one eye, surprised it was already morning. Hadn't they just fallen asleep? Rolling over, he saw Freckles completely dressed, bits of hay stuck to his shirt. "You fed already?" Looking at the clock, he blanched. "Shit, Freckles, it's not even 5. He punched the pillow around his head and closed his eyes. "I thought you said no dawn patrol today." "I changed my mind." Freckles sounded too fucking excited for 4 in the morning. "Breakfast is ready. Let's go on dawn patrol together." "Funny, for a second I thought you said let's go on dawn patrol together." He opened his mouth wide, pretending to pop his ears. "I must be going deaf." Chuckling, he shook him harder. "You heard me. I know we're tired from yesterday." "Tired?" Katsuki snorted. "Freckles, I feel like fucking microwaved death." "I promise, Kachan, if you trust me, I want to show you something. It won't fix anything, but it will put some of this craziness into perspective." He kissed his chest. "I have eggs, toast, and coffee as a temptation." "Food?" He peered at him through half-closed eyes. It was the last thing he wanted to do, but the look on his face was intriguing, like he was about to show him the answers to the world. Yawning, he got up and stretched. "What are we doing?" "Dawn patrol. Here." He set a stack of clothes by him. "I swung by your cabin earlier and got your stuff." "'Kay." Koski tried to shake himself awake. Handing him a cup of coffee, Freckles waited for him, munching on his toast. "Thanks." He sipped on a small amount. Jerking back, he looked at the black liquid. "Damn, that's strong. You need to wake up." "Okay, with this coffee, I am now," he chortled. "Is it cold outside?" "It is. There's frost on the ground, so it'll be colder out on the trail. Just layer and you'll be fine." Throwing on the shirts and flannels Freckles had grabbed from his cabin, he slid on his jeans while eating his breakfast. "This food is pretty decent," he elbowed him. "Just eggs, not that hard." He blushed. "You seem okay about going out?" He tipped his head. "Normally you'd be asking for your present." "Oh," Koski finished the eggs. "I'm not happy at all. And you're right." Grabbing the tray, he headed for the kitchen. "Right about what?" Freckles followed him. Gulping down the hot coffee, he put everything in the sink. "When we get back, this deserves one hell of a fucking present." Plucking his hat off the peg, he dropped it on his head, enjoying the red burn on his cheeks. "You'll get your present on the trail." He pushed him out the door. "I promise." They hooked Riot to the cold compressor while they tacked their horses. The darkness of the morning was still thick around them, forcing them to use flashlights as they headed out. "It's fucking cold out here." Katsuki pulled his bandana up over his face as the wind blew over the trail that led to the aquifer. The sky began to lighten along the edges of the mountains as dawn approached. "It'll get warm once the sun comes up." Freckles buttoned his heavy coat to the top. As they made their way across the south pasture, Katsuki peered down at Bombshell. Normally, his hips would swing loose with his gait, but today something felt off. Is it me, or is he walking kinda stiff?" "Bombshell?" Freckles eased Medusa back and watched him from behind. "Yeah, he's favoring that hind leg." He caught back up. "Momo was going to do some work on him and Riot today. She said it's good for arthritis." "Horses get arthritis?" "Oh, yeah, and he's one of the oldest horses on the ranch." He reached out and patted Bombshell's head. As you get better at riding, I think we may have to find you another horse. No, Katsuki grumbled. I do this speed and that's it. You need to try different horses, Kachan. It'll make you a better rider. Huffing, he let Bombshell have his head and relaxed. As they rode, he could see Freckles was grinning at him. What's with the dippy smile? You noticed. Katsuki rolled his eyes. Oi, notice what? That he was off. He beamed proudly, like a real cowboy, Kachan. Maybe... Look, we're here, he yelled excitedly. They were cresting the hill that led to the large plateau that overlooked the entire aquifer. Reining in Bombshell, Katsuki had to pinch himself to make sure he wasn't imagining the scene below. The mountains in the distance were glowing a pale gold as the sun, still behind the hills, streaked the sky with color. On the valley floor below, the icy frost that clung to the grass glistened like diamonds in the morning light. The lake reflected the brilliant sky as smoke rose in small wisps off the surface. As Katsuki watched, it seemed each second that ticked by, everything grew brighter and more colorful. Finally, from behind the distant mountain peak, a small bit of sun glowed as it emerged from its hiding spot. The entire aquifer seemed to ignite with the light like a fire spreading out from the mountain. Wow, he was mesmerized. We left too late the other day and missed it. Freckles moved Medusa closer to Bombshell and reached out to hold his hand. Katsuki glanced his way and sucked in a sharp breath. His green eyes were wide and filled with such tenderness that his chest squeezed painfully. I wanted you to see this, Freckles breathed out quietly. Nothing like it in the world. Nothing? Katsuki whispered gruffly and kissed his gloved fingers. Not with you around. This pales in comparison. Kachan, he protested playfully as a soft blush crept up his cheeks. I may not be good at saying what I feel, but I'm serious, Freckles. I'm head over heels for you. He winked at him and looked back at the valley. The sun was almost halfway out now, and the golds were fading to a blue-gray as the clouds tried to cover the sky. The icy frost was melting into water, looking more like heavy dew soaking the scrub grass that covered the long slope downward. Everything changes so fast. It does, like life. Freckles squeezed his hand. But out here, the scene hasn't changed in all the years I've ridden this trail. How long is that? Since I was 5. I rode here with my mom a lot. Katsuki smiled, imagining a 5-year-old Freckles, legs barely reaching over the saddle flap, riding his horse down this very trail. I bet that was pretty spectacular for a kid. It's pretty spectacular for an adult, but I was scared my first few times. That's why you should be nicer to me. Are you really scared? No, not today. The day we came with the guys, I was really nervous, but that's because it felt like they were all watching me. And you were being an ass trying to keep away from me, Freckles scoffed. I would have helped you. I was being an ass, Katsuki admitted. This morning feels different, though. Maybe because of everything that happened last night. It's like I cried so fucking much. I'm empty right now, but this is filling me back up somehow. See? He poked him in the arm. I promised a present. How about 2 presents? Katsuki turned to give him a cocky smile, reaching his hand around the back of his neck to pull him in for a kiss. It was soft and intimate, like the morning itself, their hot breath mingling in the cold air that surrounded them. He could feel his morning stubble as he brushed over his lips, sucking gently. Freckles responded, and their mouths joined as their tongues touched tentatively. The sun burst out from a cloud. The sudden yellow warmth shone on them. I think the sun approves. Katsuki finished the kiss, sitting back, staring at his rosy lips. I know I do. He touched his cheek. Smiling happily, Freckles looked back over the valley and sighed. I'll miss this more than anything. He had a wistful look on his face, his eyes mellowing with sadness. Well, Katsuki thinned his lips, thinking, I guess we just have to find a new sunrise somewhere else. Freckles burst out laughing. Oi, what's so funny? But he was already cringing at his own words. Okay, cowboy, he giggled. Last night you were hightailing it out of here, and now you're ready to settle down with me. Katsuki turned to look at the valley, now completely lit up with the sun, his ears burning from embarrassment. Well, I can't leave this old horse behind. No one else will ride him. He scratched Bombshell's neck. Speaking of which, I have to start thinking of what to do with all the livestock. Nope, not right now, Freckles, and I won't say this often, so enjoy it. Katsuki sighed. You were right. I needed this. We both did. So how about, just like that day we met, let's pretend this is our whole world and there's nothing else. Freckles smiled impishly. I like that, Kachan, he whispered. Me too. They sat in silence, their horses nodding off as they enjoyed the last of the sunrise. Katsuki could see some of the herd moving down by the lake. If I remember right, I think we need to keep going that way. He pointed to a trail that wound around the plateau. You lead the way, cowboy. Ha ha, I'm as close to being a cowboy as you are a mechanic. Hey, I helped with the drone thing. The drone thing? You mean you were holding it while I tested the stability? Katsuki let Bombshell pick his way along the trail. Kachan, you had me help with the wires. You're right. Okay. I'm a cowboy. Sitting at his desk, his work line flashed. Picking up the handset, Shouto answered. Loan Department, Shouto Todoroki. Shouto, Tenya laughed giddily. The foreclosure notice is ready. I'll call you back. Hanging up, he grabbed his cell phone and headed out his office. Asui, he waved, getting her attention. Going for some coffee. Want anything? Her eyes widened in surprise. No, I'm good, thanks. Okay, going out the side door, he unlocked his truck and climbed inside. Putting the key in the ignition, he hesitated and sat for a moment. Scanning the almost empty parking lot, there was no one around. It was quiet. Too quiet. Then it dawned on him. There was no Mirio. Normally, whenever he went anywhere, Mirio would pop up, scaring the shit out of him. Either jumping on his tailgate, beating on his window, grinning at him mischievously, or climbing from the back seat to tease him. His throat and chest constricted simultaneously so hard he had to gasp for air. Blinking back tears, he glanced in his mirrors to confirm he was alone and started his truck. The tightness only grew heavier as he drove to the coffee shop at the edge of town and bought himself a cup of coffee. Getting back in his truck, he sipped it slowly and stared at his phone. He needed to call Tenya back. They were so close to finishing. All the years of work. He sighed. It felt like his mind was wading through thick mud as he tried to pull himself free of whatever was going on with him. Slowly, he put the coffee into the cup holder and hit send, clicking on the speakerphone. Shouto! Yeah. Clearing his throat, he tried to sound enthused. It's so thrilling. I'll call my contact tomorrow and let him know we'll be ahead of schedule. Based on our projected timeline, I think we can begin ordering supplies. Staring at the phone, Shouto tried to think of what he would have said in the past. Do you need me to come to the city and meet with the investor? We haven't been introduced yet. Are they okay with that? You're fine, Tenya laughed. As long as I vouch for you, which I do. He made a throaty noise. Don't worry, I'll meet with everyone myself. Besides, you need to deal with the foreclosure notice. I do. Shouto picked up his coffee and took another sip. Not that he wanted to go into the city anyway, but he wondered if that wouldn't reignite the excitement that was waning for him. Still, let me know when you're going. Maybe I could come along this time. Oh, Tenya hummed. Of course, it would be great for you to come, but they usually want to meet during the week, and I know you work. Yeah, I guess. Listen, if you really want to meet with them, I could figure something out. No, it's okay. I was just... Shouto closed his eyes. Who was he fooling? The thought of driving into the city, sitting in a meeting, going over building materials, and then sharing a hotel room with Tenya sounded like the exact opposite of exciting. Are you okay? Shouto could hear the worry in his voice. Yeah, I'm fine. Good, because we're going into the final phase of our plan, Shouto. Tenya's voice grew sharper. I know that incident with Mirio was unnerving, but we need to stay focused. We've waited so long for this. This investor isn't... Well, he paused. This man won't be forgiving if something goes wrong. Be sure to contact Hound Dog and have him serve the papers. No. Shouto tapped the lid of his coffee. I want to serve them personally. What? You can't deliver the notice. It must be a sheriff. I'm a deputy sheriff, Tenya. Pretty much all of us are since they reduced the staff down to hound dog. I've had to go out with him to investigate disturbances and even reports of robbery. Oh, I didn't realize. Are you sure that's wise? Are you kidding? Shouto forced a laugh. Glancing in his rearview mirror, he saw a yellow truck drive by with a horse trailer hitched to the back. Muriel. Craning his head around to see better, his heart started racing. The truck and trailer turned on the road that led to their side of the valley. His hands grew clammy against the coffee cup. Setting it down, he squeezed his steering wheel. He knew Muriel wasn't going to see him. Most likely he was getting his family's herd from the aquifer. Trying to see better, Shouto glanced in the mirror as his truck disappeared. Looking around, he could see there was no traffic. Making a snap decision, he started his truck and pulled out of the parking lot to turn onto the main road. Shouto? Shit, Tenya was still on the phone. Oh, yeah, I want to serve it myself because he couldn't tell him the truth. How could he say that he wanted to serve Iz the papers himself rather than hiding like a coward behind someone else? I want to see his face when I serve him. Shouto frowned. That sounded worse than he'd intended. Tenya chortled. I forgot how cruel you can be sometimes. Nothing like grinding your opponent into the dust yourself, huh? Glancing at his phone, his brows pulled together. Yeah, I guess you know me best. His stomach twisted. We're two peas in a pod, he chuckled. Sometimes I wish our age difference wasn't such a wide gap. We could have been a powerful couple. Sighing loudly, he prattled on. We're better as sex friends and business partners than anything else. Coming up to the light, Shouto slowed and peered down the road. He could just see the back of Muriel's trailer as it wound around the bend. Looking up, he realized the light had turned red. Slamming on his brakes, his seatbelt snapped tight across his chest. What was he doing? His whole body was hot now, his stomach churning nervously. One silly look, was that all it took for him now? A horn blared behind him. The light was already green. Gunning the motor, he went straight. Shouto, are you there? Did I lose you? Hello? Tenya called through the phone. Damn, he did it again. Without even thinking twice, Shouto hung up the call. He really didn't want to talk to him right now anyway. The text came through next. Tenya. Lost the signal. Papers ready at the annex. Serve them today if you can. Wish I could see the final blow. Take a picture. Take a picture? Shouto read that last line again, but he knew that was something he would do. Growling at his crazy thoughts, he looped through the residential area, backtracking to the county's annex building. The smell of his coffee was filling his truck and making him sick. Rolling down the window, he let the fresh air fill the cab and his lungs. It was cool now. The dark clouds in the sky were signaling they'd probably have snow early this year. Parking on the street outside the small building, his stomach churned. It wasn't just the coffee. He'd never been so nervous before. Never doubted anything. Leaning his forehead onto the steering wheel, he tried to focus. They were so close. He couldn't stop. Everything would be wasted. All his painstaking plans for his family, the horses, the ranch. Everyone was depending on him. Taking a calm breath, he got out and headed into the building. Okay, be careful. Step on the porch slowly, Shinsou crooned as he walked backwards, holding Kiri's hand, guiding him into the cabin. Shin, Kiri sighed for the upteenth time. I've only got a concussion. I'm fine. Says who? He opened the door. The doctor and nurses. Hell, even Ochako said I'm going to be okay. Just not a lot of moving around and to rest. Exactly why I said to go slowly. Shinsou ran ahead of him into their bedroom. I'm going to pull the other mattress back out so you have your own bed. Shin, you need to have your own space to sleep. He glanced over his shoulder. Kiri was leaning his arm against the door frame, a smile ghosting his lips. Don't give me that look. Shinsou humped at him and then tried to wrangle the unruly mattress. What look is that? Coming up behind him, he slapped his ass and sat down on the other bed. Hey! Shinsou spun on him. None of that either. He tried to be serious but couldn't help the smile as he tried to get the mattress upright to get it through the door. Where are you going to sleep, Shin? In the other room for a while. Shinsou wasn't happy with that thought, but he knew it was for the best. Stop, please. He pinched the bridge of his nose. Kiri, I want you to get better. The only way I'm going to heal faster is having you with me. Shinsou stopped pushing the mattress and peered at him. Really? He wasn't sure, but Kiri looked frustrated as hell. Yes, Shin, really. All right, I'll... Suddenly the mattress began to sag in the middle, the top falling onto Kiri, who threw his arms up to keep from being smashed. Oh shit, Shinsou yelled, lunging to help. Shin. His tired voice was muffled under the mattress. Shinsou tried to keep a straight face, but he burst out laughing. Sorry, I'm so sorry. Hang on. Wedging himself underneath, he lifted it off him and leaned it against the closet. Laughing harder, he fell into the plushy top. See? Kiri sighed. You need to stay. You'll never get that out of here alone. But what if I bump into you or hit you when you're trying to sleep? Then I'll hit you back. There was a knock on their front door. Shin bounced off the mattress. It's probably Sero. I bet he saw us drive in. Racing through the cabin, he flung open the door to see him standing with his hat in his hand. His face was drawn tight. You made it home. Sero looked past him. He okay? We did, and yeah, he's okay. Shinsou let him in. Sero? Kiri called out. In my room. What's all this? Sero squeezed into the room, looking at the mattress. Opening his mouth as if to explain, Kiri gave up and pointed to the offender in the doorway. Shin. Oh, just redecorating. Huh. Sero looked around and then back at Kiri. How's the head? Woozy as shit. Why didn't you say something? Shinsou tisked and pulled his medicine from his pocket. Twisting off the top, he handed him his pills. The doctor and Ochako said you need to take a few weeks off. 1 week off and then 4 weeks of light work only. Shinsou edged between the two of them and glared at Sero. So back off. Shin. Don't shin me, Kiri. Besides, we both know you'd be back on a horse's back tomorrow if it wasn't for me. That's true. Sero sighed and held up his hands in mock surrender. Riot is out of commission, too, for at least that long. Maybe longer. I was going to come up to the barn, but Shin made me come sit down first. Kiri flicked an irritated look at him. But the doctors! Shinsou threw up his arms in defense. Riot's fine, but he'll be glad to see you. He's been pining for you pretty badly. Sero chuckled. That horse has it almost as bad as mine. Kiri smiled and motioned around the room. I'll come check on him once we get this shit back together. Okay. Oh, he chuckled. Iz and Katsuki went out on dawn patrol today. Katsuki did? Kiri smiled. Are they going to do that until I'm healed? Maybe. I thought about sending out Shinsou, but he looked at the mattress pointedly. It looks like he's decided to be your live-in nurse, so probably best to let him stick with you. Fuck you. I'm right here. Shinsou kicked Sero in the ass. I know, he drawled teasingly. While you're at it, why don't you take care of all the invalids and take over the morning feeding again? I'll need help finishing the hay barn. Plus, I asked Mirio to send his brother over when we roll the grass hay next week. Good thinking. What about the herd? Yeah, we have to get them too. I think there's only the Todoroki and Togata herds left out there, so we can get ours easily. Take Katsuki and his new rope. Kiri bit his lip, trying to hold back his laughter. A honk from the courtyard interrupted them. I wonder who's here. Shinsou headed out to the living room window. It's Mirio. He's pulling a trailer. Mirio? Sero followed him into the living room. He's at the wrong place to round up his cattle. It's a horse trailer. Shinsou peered out the window worriedly. Wonder what he wants. Kiri walked up next to them and leaned on him. Hey, Shinsou poked him. You need to go lay down. I will, but I'd really like to see Riot. But, Shinsou looked to Sero for help. Please? Kiri put his arm around his shoulder and smiled at him pleadingly. You can walk me there slowly, the whole way, he begged. Fine, Shinsou gave in. He'd been wanting to check on Float and Riot too. Here, put your arm around my waist. Are you sure? He teased, sliding his hand down to cup his ass. Kiri! He elbowed him. I told you, don't start that shit. Leaning closer, he lowered his voice. Doctor said no sex. Sarah smirked at the two of them as they walked outside. You know, he could just lay down while you climbed on. Shut up! Shinsou snapped, cutting him off. Mind your own business and go see what Mirio wants. Who knew you could be so bossy? Sarah laughed and headed to the trailer. Kiri slowed down and stared at him, his face pinched. Shinsou's stomach flipped in worry. Are you okay? Am I going too fast? No, I was thinking Sarah is right. That's not a bad idea. Kiri, he rolled his eyes. One more word out of you, and this is going to be one fucking lonely-ass winter when I move out of your cabin. I'm joking, Shin. He nuzzled his shoulder. You make such a good pillow, you can't leave. Ugh, are the meds kicking in? Giggling, Kiri wobbled and sagged into him. I think so. Huffing, Shinsou held him tighter. What do you bring us, Mirio? Kiri slurred loudly. Oh, wow, Ciro yelled as he climbed into the trailer and began guiding out a huge Appaloosa. He brought Jack. I heard you were a horse down. Mirio waited as Jack backed down the ramp. Grabbing his lead from Ciro, he walked him around in a circle. I know Shinsou said the information about the photo was free, but I'm willing to lend him to you. Is it true Riot and Float are out of commission? Who told you? Shinsou narrowed his eyes suspiciously. He wondered what everyone knew. Snipe mentioned that something happened while rounding up some cattle. Mirio stopped and let Jack look around. Oh, Shinsou was relieved that it had been Snipe who'd said something. He'd always been one of the nicer people. Yeah, it was scary. He didn't elaborate, and to Mirio's credit, he didn't push. Cero patted the horse and cooed to him. He's gorgeous, Mirio. I promise we'll take good care of him. Never doubted that you would. Handing him the lead, he shut up the trailer and pulled out his work gloves. I also came to give you a hand for a few hours. Figured you might need some help getting ready before the weather hits. Seriously? Man, I could use all the help you're willing to give. Cero played with Jack's muzzle. That's really nice of you. Shinsou was surprised by Mirio. He'd never thought much of him, especially because he liked the asshole. But it was nice getting to know him better. Well, we're pretty set on our ranch, so I've got time. Why don't we put Jack in one of the stalls? Shin and I were just going to head down to work on the hay barn. Okay. Ciro, go on ahead of me. Shinsou made a face. I gotta put Kiri back. He's about to collapse from the pills. Fine. Kiri waved his hand in the air. Ciro and Mirio both chuckled. Right. Shinsou spun him around and started for the cabin. I'll see you in a few, he called back over his shoulder. See you few, Kiri yelled, echoing his words. Laughing, he stumbled along as Shinsou half-carried him back to their cabin. Those pills really do a number on him. Cero shook his head as Kiri nearly fell walking back to their cabin. Did he get hurt? Cero shrugged and pulled on Jack's rope, walking into the barn. He could tell Mirio wanted to ask more questions from the way he was looking at him, but he kept quiet. Suddenly, Soy Sauce lunged over her door, calling out to him. There's my girl. Cyril laughed and pulled out some treats for her, giving her nose a rub. Jack's ears pricked forward, and he blew out hard through his nostrils, greeting her. Mirio grabbed the lead line and pulled him away. He's a bit too friendly, he blushed. A bit of a space invader. Not sure what your mare would think of him. Soy Sauce leaned out further and bobbed her head, trying to sniff at the new horse. She's like a siren. Cyril gave her another treat. Sweet as sugar until the other horse gets close and then she'll nip at them. He pointed to the stall across the way. Why not put him over there? That way they can talk from a distance. Okay, and don't worry, Jack won't take any shit from the other horses, but he won't bite either. He'll squeal like a stuck pig, but that's about it. Cyril laughed and grabbed some alfalfa for both horses. That'll keep them busy. After a few seconds of a stare down, both horses resigned themselves to eating. I'd say they're settled. He wiped off his shirt. If you don't mind helping with the new hay barn, I could really use an extra pair of hands. Holding up his gloves, Mirio nodded. I'm all yours for the next 3 hours. That's all I need. Zero started at the back of the barn. Thick gray clouds were blowing across the sky like tumbleweeds. Check out that action. He shaded his eyes as the sun burst out for a few seconds. I'm guessing we'll have snow soon. Yup. Mirio squinted up at the sky. We haven't had one this early in a long time. Figures, Zero grumbled. Slapping his back, Mirio laughed. Don't worry, this will be a piece of cake. Then you'll be ready to hunker down and enjoy the winter. You settled? Shinsou had managed to get the bed back together just as Kiri collapsed onto the comforter. Sleep with me. Seriously? Kiri held out his arms. Yeah. I have to help Zero, though. Kiri's bottom lip jutted out in a pout. Just like a few minutes. My head is spinning. Need to hang on to something. Sighing, Shinsou pulled out his phone to text Zero that he'd be down later. Okay, but if I ever did this to you, you'd kill me, then say no. He plopped down and pulled off his boots. Crawling over to the side, he cradled him into his arms. Thanks, Shin, he breathed heavily. I can only stay a little bit, okay? Settling down, he felt the lack of sleep pulling on him from the night before. Between the warmth of Kiri and the soft pillow, Shinsou felt like he was in heaven. Just a few, he murmured, but his redhead was already snoring. And that is it for Chapter 14 of Second Chance Ranch. If you are enjoying the story so far, please consider leaving a comment, liking, and subscribing so that you don't miss future chapters. And also, please go over to AO3 and give the author some love on the story. Again, it's Thief of Light 68 on AO3. Thanks for listening.